up as a road to redemption. Although the day Jesus entered the historic city seemed to be a forerunner to an overall festive welcome by its citizens, it quickly went downhill, as we have heard and as we have read, when Jesus angered the religious elite with his forcefulness in the temple, overturning the crooked and corrupt money changers' tables and mincing no words when he said, "You have turned my house into a den of thieves." The week in Jerusalem continued to go south quickly for Jesus when the religious elite realized that the only way to protect their turf was to trump up some false charges against Jesus and request that Rome punish him. Not only punish him, but crucify him. Jesus also sensed an uneasiness and nervousness among some of his disciples and predicted and finally realized their betrayal and their denial. You know how the press sometimes in our culture reports that it was not a good week for someone, a good week for the president, or a good week for an athlete, or a good week for an actor, or a good week for a corporate leader. Well, if there had been any press coverage of Jesus' Palm Sunday week, they would have labeled it as certainly not a good week for Jesus. That is, in worldly terms. But in spiritual terms, you might say that the road to Jerusalem turned out to be a road to redemption, in spite of all the pain and anguish that ensued for Jesus after his celebrated arrival in that great city. We know that Jesus wasn't concerned about any pomp and circumstances that accompanied his entry through Jerusalem's gates, although he more than likely enjoyed the spirit of the children and the spirit of the waving palms. But what he was more concerned about was the bigger picture of the potential of redemption for everybody. And that would come at the end of the week with the cross on Good Friday and the empty tomb on that first Easter Sunday. All of us, in our sense of things and in our own handles on where we are today, may find different reasons for redemption, depending on what level of happiness and fulfillment in which you find yourself. It might be your job, for instance. You're finding a need to redeem your calling, the purpose behind all your work. You want to feel as if you're making a difference in other people's lives. So you rethink your vocational direction. A lot of people do it, and a lot of people never do it and end up regretting it. Or perhaps you want to redeem your marriage. It's not that it's on the brink of breaking up, but you sense a need for renewal, a recrudescence of romance, perhaps that will give new life to your marriage, or a recommitment of the vows that you took together however many years ago. Or perhaps there is a need for redemption of your attitude in general, looking for the positive, in others and not just for the negative, and looking at life with more optimism and less pessimism. Or maybe it's your attitude towards your relationship with Christ. All the things that Jesus said in the New Testament about doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, and it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. And if someone forces you to go 1 mile, then just go 2 miles. It's a time to redeem your attitude toward your relationship with Christ. The words of the hymn, Come Labor On, signal to us that we should not wait too long for our redemption in whatever area that is in need of redemption. The hymn goes, Redeem the time, its hours too swiftly fly. The night draws nigh. No time for rest till glows the western sky. There was no time for rest for Southern California truck driver Larry Walton, who forever disappointed that he didn't achieve his lifelong dream of flying for the Air Force because he was unable to pass the standard eyesight examination, and frustrated with his own station in life, he decided to take redemption in his own hands when he had an idea to purchase 42 weather balloons. He filled the 42 balloons with helium, and with his girlfriend's help, he tied those same balloons to his Sears lawn chair, and then he strapped himself in the chair, armed with a pellet gun, to shoot out the balloons one by one to control his descent when he decided to land. He also had a parachute, he had jugs for ballast, he had a CB radio, and enough sandwiches to enjoy his ascent into the sky, and with any luck, fly across the desert to the Rocky Mountains. After his girlfriend helped him untether the chair, Larry shot up into the sky in his Sears lawn chair. 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 8,000 feet, 10,000 feet, 13,000 feet, then 16,000 feet, where Larry in his chair finally leveled off. Now, after Larry rose to greater heights than he ever imagined, he realized that he was drifting into the path of incoming planes to Los Angeles International Airport. He used his CB radio to issue a mayday call. He told the air traffic controller that he was in trouble. He was going to either plunge to his death, or he was going to get sucked into a jet engine, or he was going to get busted big time if he ever landed. A TWA captain then radioed into the control tower to say that he was passing a man in a lawn chair at 16,000 feet with a pistol in his hand. Larry then shot out several balloons, lowering his altitude, but then he accidentally dropped his pellet gun overboard. And as the Sears lawn chair and Larry continued their descent, they got caught in some Long Beach power lines, knocking out power to an entire neighborhood. Well, when Larry finally hit the ground, he was treated to a welcome reception from the Long Beach Police Department, was eventually charged, and he was convicted for not establishing and maintaining a two-way communication between himself and the control tower. And when asked by a reporter why he would make such a foolhardy flight, lawn chair Larry replied, "A man can't just sit around." Well, it's true that in our own roads to redemption, we just can't sit around, right? Waiting for redemption to happen. Lawn chair Larry attempted to redeem his mischance of flying for the Air Force with balloons attached to a Sears lawn chair. We attempt to redeem our past with real-life roads to realize a better future for all of our relationships in all facets of life. Son of Russian immigrants and Pulitzer Prize winner and Nobel Prize winner for literature, Saul Bellow, said in his book, "There is simply too much to think about. Any man in his right mind wants to be saved. It's always a question as to what from. Meaninglessness, fractured relationships, general sadness, the drift into different directions with no anchor. For the Christian, being saved means realizing or rebuilding a relationship with Christ. Christ tells us in the Gospel of John, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes unto the Father except by me." So in Jerusalem, after all the celebration died down and the party was over, Jesus got down to business, and he continued on that road to redemption, ending up at Golgotha, the place of the skull, the cross. There our sins would be forgiven. There we would be redeemed. Now it would be up to us to redeem ourselves through his power to deliver us from any bondage binding us to any mistakes or misgivings of the past. Now, one of the first steps to redeeming a relationship, especially with our Lord, is the acknowledgement that I may be the problem. I may be the problem in my marriage. I may be the problem in my relationship with my coworkers. I may be the problem in my relationship to my administrator. I may be the problem in my relationship to my professor. I may be the problem in my relationship with my kids or with my parents. I may be the problem in my inability to get ahead in life. I may be the problem in my attitude toward my country. I may be the problem in my attitude toward my own faith. Lawn Chair Larry, in his never-ending disappointment over his inability to fly, seemed unable to find any hope or fulfillment beyond flying, driving him to the extreme of a Sears chair liftoff. You see, Lawn Chair Larry may have been the problem. The road to redemption really begins with you and me taking a good look at ourselves in the mirror and saying to ourselves, what is there about me that needs to change in order that I may have more meaningful relationships and a better focus on what is truly important in life, and that is my relationship to Jesus Christ. The great 19th and 20th century English poet, novelist, dramatist, and theologian, and a thinker of great paradox, G.K. Chesterton, when a newspaper posed the question, what's wrong with the world? G.K. Chesterton reportedly wrote a brief letter in response, and it said, Dear Sirs, I am. Sincerely, G.K. Chesterton. I am. That's what's wrong with the world. Just consider the events and circumstances of that week in Jerusalem. If the religious elite, for instance, had looked at themselves in the mirror and confessed that they were as much as part of the problem as Rome, or if the Roman authorities looked at themselves in the mirror and confessed that they were complicit in the death and destruction around them, or if the disciples had come together as an even stronger team, there may not have developed so many cracks in their foundation of support for Jesus. In other words, if everybody admitted, as Chesterton did, I am what's wrong with the world, there might have been a different outcome in Jerusalem. English actor Jason Isaacs, the one who played the ruthless Colonel Tarrington in the movie Patriot years ago, commented on how little he was doing to make his country a better place in which to live, at the same time criticizing all the time what was going on in his country of England. When critical of his own Labour Party, he said, all these things that I don't like have happened under my watch, but I have done absolutely nothing about it other than to sound righteous. I am the problem. You know, too much self-righteousness often leads to breakdowns, right? In families and communities and nations, and you see why we all need to be constantly traveling down that road to redemption. You know, there is no road, there's no end to the road to redemption. There is no final destination on that road. There is no sign that says you have finally arrived. Paul said that Christianity is always an upward calling. You're always on that rocky road to redemption. It never ends. Sort of like the 23-year-old man named Mike Anderson, who was arrested for robbing a Burger King manager in St. Charles, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis, in the early 2000s. He was sentenced to 13 years in prison. He was released on bail, and he was told to await orders as to when to show up, to serve his time. But the orders never came due to a series of appeals and a clerical error. So Mike decided to just get on with his life. And instead of using his unexpected freedom to commit more crimes, he realized that he was really the problem in all of this, and decided to take a ride on the road to redemption and turn things around. He got married. He started a family. He started a business. He joined a church. He became a conscientious Christian and a responsible community member. And then as soon as that 13 years went by, and Mike was scheduled to be released from prison in the prison that he never was in, the Missouri Department of Corrections discovered their error. And all of a sudden, a SWAT team descended on his house and arrested him and put him behind bars in the state prison until there were enough signatures on a petition requesting another hearing from the judge. The hearing lasted all but 10 minutes. The judge gave him the credit for the years that he should have been in prison, because as the judge said to everybody there, Mike was a changed man. He's free because he's changed. You know, there is some beautiful scenery, isn't there, on the road to redemption? Amen.